right, welcome back to Mocha Don is Right. I am Mocha Don, and tonight we're talking about something extremely important. We're talking about the government censoring you. You see, the government's running a surveillance state. It even started Google with DARPA and CIA funds. They're in bed with every technology company. If you own an Android or an Apple phone, they track you everywhere you go. They keep copies of all of your call records, but with the modern technology we have today, they can even actually keep a copy of your voice. It's just not a problem anymore. 10 years ago, they were just keeping copies of your call records, what they called metadata. Today, they're keeping copies of everything. And the reason they're doing this, sure, they could be planning some great entrapment of you and your family so that you could be put in jail, but you're not that important. You just as the normal citizen, they're doing this with no labor. They're doing it with AI, with computer programming, and they're doing it so they can censor you. It's extremely important for them to censor you because free speech is what allows for free thought. If you don't have free speech, you can't have free thought. You can't debate ideas. You can't learn the truth about anything from anyone. So, there are things being put into all of your internet devices, your phones, your computers, and they're already in your phones and your computers, but now they're putting them in your washing machines, your refrigerators, your washer and dryer, your dishwasher. Anything that's internet enabled can not only be spying for China, because so many of these chips are made in China, but the same technology, the same exact stuff that's in these chips can be used to spy on you. And through artificial intelligence, they can determine what your thought process is, everybody that you know and associate with, what your political party is, who you're going to vote for. They're able to use that data to manipulate you, to feed you propaganda, and of course, to prevent you from communicating the truth to anybody. It's really frightening, folks. We've got some info on that for you tonight. I'm going to kick back and enjoy this with you. And I have an important message for you at the end, so stick around.
Dwight Eisenhower, when he was getting out of office, gave this really big, famous speech about how everybody should pay attention to the military-industrial complex.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Everybody is aware that Facebook is up to no good, that Google is up to no good, that all of these companies are really trying to shape and influence not just our societies, but our lives, our buying habits, every kind of general behavior that we have in a deeply targeted and personal way. And it's technology that is enabling this and making it all possible for the first time. Now, again, that hasn't solved the problem, but the first step to solving any problem is we have to create a shared sense of understanding. We need a common set of facts, and today we have that.
If you take the battery out of your phone, I can still listen to you. In the old days when you took the batteries out, you take the batteries out and think you're good, and you go in there and skiff, and you can talk about whatever you want. Oh, I could still listen to you.
Damn.
We were doing stuff that you could never find what we were doing, ever, and you never will. And it's in every piece of equipment right now, in every chip right now, there's stuff. And where are we buying all the chips from?
China.
Do you think we need to worry about what they're putting in our electronics?
Yeah, I'll give you one example. I bought this awesome all-in-one vacuum mop called Tineco. It completely connects to a Chinese server to transmit and receive information. I made a joke out of it. I actually have a video of it where you could turn the audio on for it. Like when you plug it in, it says, charging started, charging stopped. So like when you put it on and off, I could control that with my computer through a Chinese cloud server. There's no reason that vacuum and mop should connect to a Chinese cloud infrastructure whatsoever. And at any point, they can change the way that functionality works and take over my home network with this vacuum mop. So,
Are you serious with a vacuum mop?
Yep. Yeah.
How many devices do you think have these things in them?
Anything with a Wi-Fi connection, it's, you know, not everything's going to be China beaconing back and forth. Anything with Wi-Fi capability is going to open up, you know, an attack vector.
Washing machines, refrigerators, just why does a vacuum not
I don't know.
Wi-Fi capability?
I can adjust the volume. I can check when the last time I used it. Does it need to be cleaned? Does it, you know, it tells you all that stuff.
Our devices are casting all of these records that we do not see being created, that in aggregate seem very innocent. You were at Starbucks at this time. You went to the hospital afterwards. You spent a long time at the hospital. After you left the hospital, you made a phone call. You made a phone call to your mother. You talked to her until the middle of the night. The hospital was an oncology clinic. Even if you can't see the content of these communications, the activity records, what the government calls metadata, which they argue they do not need a warrant to collect, tells the whole story. And these activity records are being created and shared and collected and intercepted constantly by companies and governments. And ultimately it means as they sell these, as they trade these, as they make their businesses on the backs of these records, what they are selling is not information. What they are selling is us. They're selling our future. They're selling our past. They are selling our history, our identity, and ultimately, they are stealing our power and making our stories work for them.
Well, thanks for being here, everybody. I characterize it pretty simply. It's spying and lying. Spying and lying. That's what our government, this federal government, has been doing for a long time, and it's come front and center to the American people in astounding and breathtaking horror over the last 7 or 8 years. It's been going on a lot longer than that, but the American people are really aware of it now. And many of us, probably all of us, and all of my colleagues on at least my side of the aisle, our side of the aisle, when they ran, said to their constituents or their hopeful constituents, if you elect us, we're going to stop this. We're going to end this. We're going to stick up for your constitutional rights. Ladies and gentlemen, there's just a few things that we have to do when we take the oath. Uphold and defend the Constitution. And in the Constitution is enshrined the right to privacy and the Fourth Amendment. It's right there. Yet in this chamber, in these halls, we have members, elected members, instead of upholding their oath to defend the Constitution, actively trying to subvert the Constitution, spying and lying. We've seen it. My good friend Will Warren was too kind. Said almost no accountability. Almost no accountability. Tell me where there's been any accountability. The American people demand it. And yet we stand on the precipice, after all of this, after watching a president from the party that's now in control in the House of the majority party in this body, the president of the United States was spied on and then impeached based on falsified information. I don't know how more breathtaking it can be. And yet, not only are some of my colleagues on my side of the aisle and some on the other side of the aisle actually trying to just continue this, they're trying to add to it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Foreign intelligence. Not one of these members has a problem with spying on foreign actors that are going to take some malicious action toward the United States of America or our citizens. Not one of us has a problem with that. But when it comes to the rights of American citizens, of Americans, we have a huge problem with that. And if they can't abide getting a warrant and probable cause to go after American citizens, quite honestly, they shouldn't be serving in this body at all. And I will tell you this from my standpoint, unless there's significant reform, and I mean significant reform, real reform, not just changing the chairs, the deck chairs on the sinking ship, significant reforms protecting Americans' rights, then you can count on me for a no vote. And let me just close with this. You're going to hear all kinds of stories. Well, the border's wide open. Aren't you concerned about the millions of people coming into the country, of which there are probably terrorists and gangs and so on and so forth, that this might help us catch? Once again, the government has created the problem. The American people aren't the ones to be punished for the solution. We can fix that problem too. We can fix that problem too without taking away American citizens' rights. It is our number one duty. It is our number one duty to stand in support of the Constitution and the rights of every American citizen that are enshrined in that document.
The defining fact of the United States is freedom of speech. To the extent this country is actually exceptional, it's because we have the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. We have freedom of conscience. We can say what we really think because we're citizens, not slaves. But that right, that foundational right that makes this country what it is, that right from which all other rights flow, is going away at high speed in the face of censorship. Our censorship is affected on the basis of fights against disinformation and malinformation. And you could be stripped of your right to express them, either in person or online. In fact, expressing these things can become a criminal act and is. These efforts are being directed by the U.S. government, which you pay for and at least theoretically own. It's your government. But they're stripping your rights at very high speed. Mike Benz is, we can say with some confidence, the expert in the world on how this happens. Mike Benz had the cyber portfolio at the State Department. He's now executive director of Foundation for Freedom Online. And we're going to have a conversation with him about a very specific kind of censorship. By the way, we can't recommend strongly enough. If you want to know how this happens, Mike Benz, B-E-N-Z, is the man to read. But today we just want to talk about a specific kind of censorship, and that's censorship that emanates from the fabled military-industrial complex, from our defense industry and the foreign policy establishment in Washington. And that's significant now because we're on the cusp of a global war, and so you can expect censorship to increase dramatically. And so if you could just walk us through how the foreign policy establishment and defense contractors and DOD and just the whole cluster, the constellation of defense-related, publicly funded institutions strip from us our freedom of speech.
Sure. You know, one of the easiest ways to actually start the story is really with the story of internet freedom and its switch from internet freedom to internet censorship, because free speech on the internet was an instrument of statecraft almost from the outset of the privatization of the internet in 1991. We quickly discovered through the efforts of the Defense Department, the State Department, and our intelligence services that people were using the internet to congregate on blogs and forums, and free speech was championed more than anybody by the Pentagon, the State Department, and our sort of CIA cutout NGO blob architecture as a way to support dissident groups around the world in order to help them overthrow authoritarian governments as they were sort of billed. Essentially, the internet free speech allowed kind of insta-regime change. This Google began as a DARPA grant by Larry Page and Sergey Brin when they were Stanford PhDs, and they got their funding as part of a joint CIA-NSA program to chart how, quote, birds of a feather flock together online through search engine aggregation. And then 1 year later, they launched Google and then became a military contractor quickly thereafter. They got Google Maps by purchasing a CIA satellite software, essentially. And all of the internet free speech technology was initially created by our national security state. VPNs, virtual private networks, to hide your IP address. Tor, the dark web, to be able to buy and sell goods anonymously. End-to-end encrypted chats. All of these things were created initially as DARPA projects or as joint CIA-NSA projects. Free speech was an instrument of statecraft from the national security state to begin with. In 2014, after the coup in Ukraine, and when the hearts and minds of the people of Crimea voted to join the Russian Federation, that was the last straw for the concept of free speech on the internet in the eyes of NATO.
Pause for a moment and say, wait a second, we've just identified our new enemy as democracy within our own countries. I think that's what you're saying. They feared that the people, the citizens of their own countries, would get their way, and they went to war against that.
Yes.
Foreign policy establishment, et cetera. You included the mainstream media. Now, in 2021, the NSA broke into my private text apps and read them and then leaked them to the New York Times against me. That just happened again to me last week. And I'm wondering how common that is for the intel agencies to work with so-called mainstream media like the New York Times to hurt their opponents?
Well, that is the function of these interstitial government-funded non-governmental organizations. The Aspen Institute was busted doing the same thing with the Hunter Biden laptop censorship. You had this strange situation where the FBI had advanced knowledge of the pending publication of the Hunter Biden laptop story, and then magically the Aspen Institute, which is run by essentially former CIA, former NSA, former FBI, and then a bunch of sort of civil society organizations, all hold a mass stakeholder simulation, censorship simulation, a 3-day conference. This came out, and Yoel Roth was there. This is a big part of the Twitter file leaks, and it's been mentioned in multiple congressional investigations. But somehow the Aspen Institute, which is basically an addendum of the national security state, got the exact same information that the national security state spied on journalists and political figures to obtain, and not only leaked it, but then basically did a joint coordinated censorship simulator in September, 2 months before the election, in order, just like with the censorship of mail-in ballots, to be in ready position to pre-censor anyone online amplifying
Wait a
a
second.
news story that had not even broken yet.
The Aspen Institute? So, I mean, which is, by the way, I've spent my life in Washington. It's kind of Walter Isaacson, formerly of Time Magazine, ran it, former president of CNN. I had no idea it was part of the national security state. I had no idea its funding came from the U.S. government. This is the first time I've ever heard that. But assuming what you're saying is true, it's a little weird that Walter Isaacson left Aspen Institute to write a biography of Elon Musk. Strange, or no?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you haven't seen that entire interview by Tucker Carlson, his interview with Mike Benz, I'm going to strongly suggest you do that. It is about an hour and 5 minutes or an hour and 10 minutes long. I hacked those parts out of it for your convenience, but I am going to tell you, there is no more important interview on YouTube, and you should, when you have an hour to spare, go to Tucker Carlson's YouTube channel. It was 7 days ago. Today's the 23rd of February. So around the 16th of February. And there's no more important interview than that Tucker Carlson interview. Mike Benz lays out the entire history of it, how long it's been going on, how everything developed, how they use it to corrupt elections, how Google's entirely a CIA asset, how every tech company is coerced into doing whatever the hell the CIA wants them to do. And these people are not your friend. This is happening domestically within the United States. So if you're not aware of it, you're aware of it now. They can listen to you even if the battery's not in your cell phone. My cell phone, I can't even take the battery out of anymore. So you are absolutely not going to be able to be free if this is allowed to go on. Obviously, I'm a fan of Donald Trump, so I think you should vote for Donald Trump. But even if you're a die-in-the-wool old Democrat, traditional liberal, you need to hold the Democrat Party to account, because 10 years ago, the Democrat Party did not go along with any of this, at least not publicly. But now they do. I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said those who would trade essential liberty for temporary security essentially deserve neither. And that's true. We don't need to be protected so much that we lose all of our rights. There are no criminals in a police state. So you need to get on the ball and figure this stuff out. I hope I'm helping out. I hope this was an entertaining video for you tonight. I hope you learned something you didn't know. Thank you very, very much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We really need your support. We're a brand new channel just getting going. So please like, comment, and subscribe. And you have a wonderful evening. God bless you.